So let's put all of this into action now by building out a full LinkedIn content system from scratch. So to build out our LinkedIn content system, we're going to go into our N8N environment again, and we're going to hit create new workflow. We're going to call it LinkedIn content system or something so that you can remember. And what we're going to do is we're going to load in the notes from the template linked. So go down below, grab the template, and we're going to load in the file here. And all that's going to do is just give us the notes on what we're actually building. So to remind you of what we're building, it's going to be a production ready system that generates a week's worth of content in minutes in your brand voice. So it gives you full editorial control. You can edit posts before they get published. You can review them and post automatically, which will hopefully turn, potentially 5 hours of work a week of scheduling posts and trying to work out what content we're writing into just 15 minutes of review. So you can actually just review it, approve it, and then it automatically schedules and sends off to post. So there's a few things that we're going to plan and build out here. The first is around Google Sheets. So we're just going to use a basic Google Sheet to actually plan and schedule our content. So we'll have things like the topic, the date, the status, the actual generated post, the edited post, the approved checkbox. And then we're also going to put in our brand guidelines as well so that it can pull from that information and actually sound like us when it's writing these posts. We're going to have a manual review step where we're actually going to edit the posts and then approve them for a workflow. So I know from experience that we're going to then have a second workflow off the back of this, which is because we've got a second trigger. The second trigger is every single day. It will read the sheet, work out if there's any new approved ones, and send them to be scheduled or posted on the relevant platform as well. And then we know that throughout that, we're going to have a few different things. We're going to have Google Sheets, where it's going to store our information about our posts. We're going to have AI, some sort of AI for writing. We're going to use a platform, an external platform to generate some images as well for our posts. And then we need a service to actually post to our LinkedIn. And that's going to make it much easier to post to our LinkedIn. And then what we're going to do is run through the full process. You can see exactly how this works. And if you follow step by step, you'll be able to build this out for yourself using your own brand guidelines. It'll be super simple and you'll have a working system by the end. So like with any good workflow, we're going to start by planning this out and just doing a basic plan of what are our inputs, what data transformations do we need to make, and what are our expected outputs for both of these workflows, the AI content generator and the AI and the automated scheduler as well, the second workflow. So let's start by just laying out some notes here and actually think about each step we've got here. So if you think about it from its most basic level, for the first workflow, which is the content generator, we're going to need some sort of place to input a topic. So we've got a topic input here, and we are saying that actually this could probably come from something like a Google Sheet. So let's assume that our trigger is going to be a new row added to a Google Sheet, for example. And we know what we're trying to get to, which is actually a topic output. And again, we know that that's going to be added back to our Google Sheet. And the reason that is the output is because we want to actually go in and have the ability to edit it. We don't want it to post straight away to LinkedIn without us reviewing it, because we don't necessarily trust that it's going to write as well as us. It can get 80% of the way there, but maybe we want to do a manual check. So we know that we have a topic input from Google Sheet, and we will probably want to put back to Google Sheet as well the topic at the end of the flow. Now we've basically got to go from that topic input to a generated LinkedIn post. So if I think about what is probably involved there, we have some sort of AI, let's just call it AI stage for now, which is probably going to be an LLM chain because we don't want it to go and access loads of tools that writes our content. So we're basically like, this is the topic we're going to write about. We send it to an AI and say, write out a topic given these constraints, and put it back into our Google Sheet. It's as simple as that at this stage. We then will have some sort of image generation stage. So we want to add an image, and we probably want to review that image as well. So let's say image generation, and then generate an image that matches the content. And I know that we also want to pull in our brand voice guidelines. So we'll probably have a second input at some point, which is actually our brand input. And both of those will be fed into the AI stage. And let's assume we're going to have a new table in our Google Sheet that's going to pull that in as well. So we have the input, we have the brand inputs. We're going to ask AI to write a LinkedIn post for us. We're going to generate an image that matches that. And then we basically have an image and a post that we're going to then put back into our Google Sheet ready for review. That is the first workflow. We might change little bits about it, but that is the first workflow. The second workflow is once we've approved the flow, we need to actually get the approved posts and post to LinkedIn. So let's start drawing out the second workflow down here. And this is how I build out every workflow. I build out the logic in my head and on the canvas. So it's then easier when you come to build because you know exactly what you're working with. You know what data formats you need to manipulate. And obviously we've not got into the data format stages yet of seeing the actual data, but we will build that afterwards. So we probably have a time trigger here because maybe every day we're going to check, are there any new approved posts for today? If yes, then take an action. So we know that it's also going to be conditional, i.e. we're actually asking it a query, is it scheduled today? Because what we want to do is ignore everything that's not scheduled today. So we can put if it's not, and you should think about these scenarios as if yes, this happens, if no, this happens, or if this condition is true, what happens basically. So we'll put if no, no further action, if yes. And if I think about it, if yes, we're actually probably just posting to LinkedIn. So it's as simple as we have a time trigger that pulls from our Google Sheet. And actually, that's one step I've missed in the logic here, which is actually we need to get the data. So every day we have a time trigger, say it happens every day at 9 a.m. And then we'll say get post data, and that will be from the Google Sheet. So if it's an approved post, it will get the post data. And that's also a condition that we can put together with, is it scheduled today and is it approved? Because if it's not approved and it's not scheduled for today, or it's not scheduled for today, then no further action is taken. If it is approved, then we're going to post to LinkedIn. So I hope that all makes sense so far. We've got workflow 1 and workflow 2 planned out. Now let's actually get into the build stage, and we'll go step by step through each node. So what we're going to do now is set up the Google Sheet to house all of our data. So this doesn't need to be a Google Sheet. It could be an Airtable, could be a database, could be your whatever system you're using to store your data. But Google Sheet's nice and easy to do a test workflow like this on. So we're going to go and sign into Google Sheets, and we're going to name this our content calendar. Now we're going to start on sheet 1, and we're going to call this the brand down here on the tab. And we're going to add a new table or tab here, and we'll call it calendar just to keep it nice and organized. Now in the calendar, I know we're going to need a few things. We're going to need topic, we're going to need date, and we probably need the date created as well as the schedule date. So we'll call it date scheduled. We're going to need somewhere to put the content in. So we're going to give it a topic, and we're going to receive back some content. And then we're going to need some sort of status because we want to know if it's approved. We want to know if it's already been scheduled. We want to know if it's in draft. Like we just need some sort of status on there as well. So nice and simple. We write about different topics. It will bring the content back. So what the inputs we're putting in is the topic basically. And then the other thing we're putting in are probably just some guidelines around our brand. Now, you might have some company brand guidelines or writing guidelines that you're going to input into here. And if so, that's great. It's just going to basically, we're going to tell it, take this information and use these guidelines to format how you write. We're not going to tell it things like the length of the posts and things like that. This is purely how we write with examples. Things like length of posts, etc., will come in the AI prompt later. So we've set up this. Let's just give it a random topic in here, and let's just say AI agents. AI agents instead of employees. Let's make it more specific. So we're going to go back to the LinkedIn content system, and let's first just start pulling the data. So whenever you build out a workflow like this, you want to just test it at every stage. So we know that we're going to have a topic input here. So we're going to go to the tab or the nodes here, and we're going to say Google Sheets. And we can either trigger it when a new row is added. So when we add a new row in here, it's going to trigger this automation if it's active. And it's basically going to be like, right, there's a new topic. Let's write about it. So what we can do is say when a row is added, we're going to poll it every minute, which means we're going to check for the data every single minute, or we can do it every hour, every day. But right now, we might as well just do it every minute because the workflow is not active anyway. But traditionally, you'd probably just do this once a day. So actually, let's just put it as once a day at 8 a.m. It's going to go and check and then create the new content because maybe at 9 a.m. we have in our calendar to go and edit the content there. What we're going to do again is create our new credential. And because we're using the N8N cloud, we can just sign in directly with Google here. We'll give it access to our Google accounts and then therefore be able to access this spreadsheet. So I'm going to go and grab the spreadsheet URL from here, and we're going to go back into N8N and make sure it has access to the spreadsheet and that we can pull data from that. So it's all connected successfully. We're going to go back and go to again, we're going to just name this properly. And I'm just going to give it the email name so that if I add new accounts in the future, I know what credential this is. So it's for that email address, basically, or for that Google Drive account. Let me keep editing. Let me save that and close. And now it's going to save up there. Look. So we can choose the document from our list, but actually it's probably easier rather than trawling through all my documents to just give it a direct URL. So I'll go to URL. I'll put that in there. I'll also give it the sheet ID from the list. So the sheet will be one of these two. So at first, we're just pulling this topic information. So let's pull by URL the sheet, and inside the URL, it will be able to determine what is the sheet. So it's now saying trigger on a row when a row is added. So we can fetch a test event, and it's probably just going to pull the only row of data we've got. And the only row of data we've got is this header. And then underneath, we've got AI agents instead of employees. So we're going to see that in here. All of these other fields are empty, but we've got AI agents instead of employees. So that's the first big step, right? We're pulling data. So we now have a topic that's being pulled from Google Sheet. Now we need to also bring the brand inputs in. So the brand inputs sit in here. And let's just bring in test brand guidelines, because right now it doesn't matter what's in here. We just need to check that it's actually working. So instead of being a trigger this time, we'll get a Google Sheet node and we will say get row in sheet, and we're going to select the correct credential, and this should show up in the list. If I save this all, if I come out the workflow, I go back to our LinkedIn content system, and hopefully it should show up in the credentials list, the credential we've just created. For some reason it's not, so we're going to just sign in again, sign into that. Maybe the trigger and the node have different credentials there, but we're just going to authorize it again. It's nice and easy, nice and quick. It's going to connect successfully. And again, we'll just make sure it has the right name. And these are just best practice tips, right? You don't need to follow this, but it's going to help you in the long run. And again, we're going to grab the URL, but this time we're going to grab the URL of the brand guidelines, which is different, as you can see, from the calendar in here. So we're going to grab that URL, we're going to put it into here, and we're going to put it into here again. And if I just run and execute workflow down here, or I click the trigger in here, it's going to just run those both, right? So it's passing this information into this node, but it doesn't matter because at this point, we just want to execute both bits of information. We're not passing anything from the previous node to this node. We're just trying to get all information on the same page so that we know that it's executing. So we have test brand guidelines. Great. It's coming in. We know we have the guidelines. We know we have the topic, which means we can now start to generate something using AI and then eventually output something into Google Sheets. So whilst we're working with Google Sheets, let's actually just set up a quick output in here. So I can just copy and paste this node, get row and sheets. But instead of the get row operation, it would actually be append or update row. So if there's a row already existing in the sheet inside the topic calendar, then, which it should be because we're pulling the topic from there, then it's going to update this content column. So we're going to grab the URL, make sure we're connected to the right sheet, paste that into there. And what it's going to do is it's going to find all the columns and it's going to put them down here. So you can see it's found the columns: date, schedule, date created, topic, content, status. And what we're saying is, at the end of this output, if I come out here, at the end of this, you're going to put values into these values, and you're going to basically find out from here, because we'll have multiple things to match against. We'll basically choose a unique identifier to work out which row we're going to add the content back into. So it's always best to add in something like ID, and this can just be a sequence of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, or XYZ, whatever you want, a unique sequence of numbers that we're basically going to pull in and then map back based on that. So I'm going to rerun this quickly. And whilst I rerun this, I know this is going to error out because we've not connected it to do anything. So I can just deactivate it using this little power button or hit D on my keyboard, and it's going to just deactivate that. And now when I run it, it's going to just pull the new data, so with our ID in there, through. So in our output then, and we can see that it's going to now pull the data from the trigger. We've got this ID column in here. We're grabbing the brand guidelines. And in our output, I'll just activate this again, just make sure it's all active. In our output, we're going to match it by our ID. And what we might need to do is just refresh the column list in here, because actually we've updated this. And it's already recognized that ID is a column that would usually match on. And what we're going to do is on the left-hand side in our inputs, we can see where we grab the ID, which was our Google Sheet trigger, which was our first trigger. And for some reason, it's not working. So let me rerun it. So if you're not getting any of the previous rows come through, then just rerun, and it's going to error out like we thought. But actually in the Google Sheets trigger, we now see all of the inputs. So we say, okay, let's use our ID to match where we put that data back. So whatever row came in, we're going to put the content back in that row by matching it on this ID. We're not going to fill out the date scheduled because it's going to be manual. So we're going to remove that. We're going to put in a date created, and we're going to use what we used earlier, which was the double brackets, $now, and then just format that into today's date. And we can just leave that as is. So now.format, month, day. That's fine. We're not going to have changed our topic. It's going to be exactly the same topic, but we're going to have input the content and we're going to change the status. And we might have the status being output as a draft post. So the status might originally be something like not started. And we could have a drop down for this, but for now, let's just leave it as text. And we're going to output it as draft. So to summarize where we are so far, we're grabbing the inputs, both the brand guidelines and the topic. We're going to create something next, but we've also mapped the outputs. You could just go through stage by stage and actually create the content, but I prefer to just work out what outputs we're going to do and then map out everything in the middle. So right now we've got the inputs. Let's use an AI node. So we'll click on the plus icon. And I know that we're not going to use any tools for this. We're just going to input a prompt and ask ChatGPT based on the topic, produce us a LinkedIn post, So we're going to go LLM chain, basic LLM chain, and we're just going to drag that over to this AI stage that we've predetermined, get rid of any nodes connections in here. We're going to connect it up to a model in a moment, but we're going to go into the LLM chain and we're basically saying, okay, let's define our prompt below. And it even calls it a prompt, right? A user message or prompt. We're going to keep it super basic right now. We will improve this at the end. We just want to get the functionality working. Then we can actually refine it. So think about your first version, then we refine and make it better. So and we'll turn this into an expression because we know we're going to pull in the topic dynamically. Write a LinkedIn post, max 150 characters on the following topic, and then we'll pass in the topic. And then we'll say using the following brand guidelines. So you can literally keep it as basic as this. We will generate a better prompt, and I'll show you how to write a good prompt shortly. But what we're going to do now is pass in those values. So we're passing in the topic, and you can see on the left-hand side, the input is empty and the output is empty because we've not actually executed it yet. So a way to connect this is just drag those rows in, and you can now see the input is no longer empty. And we want to pull in the topic. So rather than putting the curly braces in there, we can just grab the topic and it says, okay, from the Google Sheets trigger, I'll grab the item from the JSON format, which is topic. And then you can see down here, or we can open this up as a window, write a LinkedIn post, max 150 characters on the following topic, AI agents instead of employees, using the following brand guidelines. And we know we pulled in the brand guidelines in the next one, the next node. And one thing I'm going to do just to clean this up, and I'd recommend doing this, is click on a node, press the space bar, and we're going to rename them. So it's just something straightforward like get topic. So we want to say what it's actually doing, and get rows is actually get brand guide. So now that means when I'm looking at the inputs here, we can see, okay, get brand guide. I can pull the guidelines from there. I can pull the topic from there. Now we basically have a prompt that we're going to send to a model, right? And we know what we want as an output. We just want content. So we're going to require a specific output format. And we'll talk about this, but we're going to enable a fallback model in a moment. And don't worry about batch processing because this is just doing something on a small scale. But what we've done here is we've said, okay, connect up and tell me what output format you want. And also if the model that I'm trying to use fails, so like GPT-4o fails, then use this alternative model. So it's just an extra security option. And you can see now we've got all of these connections that we need to form outside here. So the first one we're going to do is the output parser. And what we use is a structured output parser. And you can see it's like generate the output from a JSON example. And we talked about what JSON was earlier. So all we're going to do is look at this and say, okay, what do we want as our output? Let's get rid of the complexity here, get rid of the comma, because otherwise it will cause some errors. But if you have multiple values, you put in a comma and then you put the second value in here, but we're not doing that. Second key, sorry. So what we're doing is just saying content LinkedIn post. So all we're saying is generate the output in our LLM chain to match this format, which is it's going to be output in an object here, a JSON object, and the object's going to be called content. And this will just keep it consistent every single time. It's not going to output it as content. It's not going to output it as LinkedIn post. It's not going to output it as content LinkedIn post. It's going to always output it as content. That's all we're saying. Just always output it the same, because then we can do predictable things with it because we've got predictable output. So we're going to connect now to a model. And when we click on the model plus icon, it gives us all these different models. And I'd highly recommend you signing up to OpenRouter, which is essentially a website that allows us to connect to all sorts of different models. So it's a unified interface for large language models, i.e., if you want to connect to GPT-4o, absolutely fine. If you want to connect to Gemini and a free model, absolutely fine. If you want to connect to Claude, fine. You can do it all from one API token. So it makes it significantly easier. Sign up here to an OpenRouter account. It's free to sign up. You would go into your account, you'd hit keys, and you'd create a new API key. We're going to call it LinkedIn test, and you can give it a credit limit in here as well. So we're going to create that. It's going to show you your new API key. You can copy and paste it in here. And all we're going to do is click on the model, and we're going to scroll down to OpenRouter, and we're going to select that credential. And now we're going to input that API key we've just copied. We're going to save that, and it should appear green if it's tested successfully, connected successfully. You need to make sure your account is all set up, etc. as well. So we've got that LinkedIn test API key set up. And now down here, it will also populate with all these different models. And like I said, we're just going to use free models in this tutorial. And I know that one of the Gemini models is absolutely free. Gemini 2.0 Flash expedited free. So let's try and see if that works. If not, we can use an extremely cheap model and just put some money behind that as well. Let's leave this as OpenRouter. And then as a fallback model, I've got some credits in my account. So I'll just put GPT-4o Mini, which is a paid model, on my account. And if you want to find out how much models are, then you can go to the models comparison in here, and we can go to something like Gemini 2.5 Flash. We can click on that. And once we go into that, it's going to tell us, okay, we can take 1 million tokens in context. So it accepts up to 1 million tokens. You'll never write that unless you're putting in some serious context. And it's going to cost us 30 cents per million input tokens, $2.50 per million output tokens, compared to something like GPT-4, which is going to be $2 per million input tokens, so more expensive on the input and far more expensive on the output, $8 per million output tokens. But still, in the grand scheme of things, this is going to be very few tokens and not going to cost you very much, especially for the time it saves. So we'll come back here, we'll give it a second model, and we'll just call this, hit space, we'll call it the fallback model just to keep it clean here. So now what we're doing is basically saying on the input, write a LinkedIn post and output it as this content JSON. Let's forget about the image generation for now, and let's just connect it up to our topic output here. And you'll notice that 5 items are coming through at the moment. And we'll talk about how to get around this and do it one at a time. Because actually the reason 5 items are coming through is because I put 5 IDs here on purpose. But what we want to do is the rest of them are blank. So we only want to process ones with content there. So let's add a filter in. And this is where like planning can only go so far, because when you see the actual data come through, you start to realize what else you need. And let's just take out blanks. And what we'll do is we will use an if node. So we'll grab the node. It'll be an if node from here, and we'll just put it inside here. And in fact, it's probably best to use a filter node here, because we're basically saying don't include any that aren't blank. And what we're saying is if we look at the table of data or the JSON, in fact, what we're looking at is topic. We can go on the schema. We can say if the topic, which is a text input or a string input, is not empty, then by default, it's going to continue. If it is empty, then don't continue. So if we rerun that now, it's going to come through as 5 items in here, but only one of them is going to get passed through. Now, the second thing you want to know about this, and the second addition we're going to have, is maybe we have 2 topics. And the second one is AI agents writing blogs. And that one is not started as well. So we might want to process these one at a time rather than have 5 come in at once necessarily. We might want to just process them one at a time. And for this, we're going to use what's called a loop node, and it loops over items, effectively splitting it into batches. And by the way, whenever you bring in a new node, it's always going to connect to the last node that you connected to. So it's best practice to just click on the workflow and somewhere random. And what we're going to do is just get rid of this replace me function here, and I'll show you easily how to use this loop node. But what we're saying is for every item that comes in, for every topic we want to output, we want to just execute that one first and then come back. You can ask it to execute 5 at a time. Like this wouldn't be a problem. It would just execute this, the 2 topics, and everything would just be executed twice, and that would work absolutely fine. But if you're working with mass volumes of data, it's always good to process one at a time. So we're just going to stick in the loop node there, and it's going to look a little bit messy at first, but we're basically on the end of the loop, we're going to tell it what it should do time and time again. And for this, we're just going to say, actually, just do the whole flow. So you're going to get the brand guidelines. You're going to not process it if it's blank. You're going to run it through the AI generator. And then we're going to output the topic as well. And then that should loop back round, because the second item then will initiate and we'll go through this process. So we'll clean it up in a moment because it's starting to look a bit messy. But we've basically got the topic input. It's going to go through one at a time. You're going to grab the brand guidelines, only process it if it's not blank, because we don't want to spend money on the basic LLM chain if not. And then you're going to output the topic into the content here. Now, I know that after the basic LLM chain is processed here, we're going to need to now put the content in here dynamically. So we need to process it once to see what that content will look like. And I've already spotted there's a mistake here, because we're taking in the values here and then we're later checking if it's blank. And if it's not blank, if it is blank, it's going to completely stop at that stage and not follow the loop round. So it could potentially miss processing later on. So we're going to remove this, and we're going to move the blank earlier on in, or the blank filter earlier in the process. So we're going to grab the filter and move it before the loop, and we'll just tidy this up as we go, because we only want to process it for items that we actually want to process. We don't want unnecessary processing to get the brand guideline every time we have an input, for example. And you can start to group these together, right? You can say that actually we're filtering for blanks and we're processing one at a time. So this could become filter and process one at a time. So the filter will only pass through the ones we want to process now. They'll now be processed one at a time. We'll connect the brand input to this AI stage, and then it's going to output our topic. And let's just disconnect the loop and disconnect this here. Let's run it up until the basic LLM chain to see what the output is. So we're just giving it no brand guidelines here. So it's going to output something probably pretty poorly written. Write a LinkedIn post, max 150 characters on the following topic, AI agents instead of employees. And then we've just got test brand guidelines. And you can see that it's pulled out something pretty poor at the moment. And we will drastically improve this output. And that's because the prompt is so poor. But we're just getting the whole flow working, and then we will refine. But what we can do now is we can see what the output was. And the output was content inside that object like we expected. So actually down here in our append the content, we can just drag and drop that content across. And now if we run this step as well, execute the step, it will execute everything previous to it. Let's try that again. Okay, so we've got the OpenAI rate limit reached. And that's probably because with this free model, we're only going to get a certain amount of uses per minute. So I'm actually just going to switch it to something cheap like Gemini Flash 1.5, super cheap, super quick. And we're just going to execute that workflow. If you want to use only the free ones, then you're going to have to pay in time for that by just waiting a little bit longer. So it's output the result here. And now it's said actually it's processed that correctly. So it's given us the output that it's put in. In the first ID, it's given us in the content calendar that new content. And we can see that that has now been put into the Google Sheet. So this is like nearly a first working version of this content system. So you're probably thinking at this stage, great, we've got a content generator that puts into a Google Sheet, but that is actually a massive step. You've integrated AI here. You've told it a certain output format. You've told it to process one at a time. You've filtered out the blank items. And now if we connect up the loop, we should hopefully see, if I just grab that loop end and connect it back to the loop start, we should hopefully see that both things would be processed here. And if we execute that workflow, it's going to pull in and keep two items, and both of them are going to be appended and changed in the sheet. So it's now going through in a loop. It's now done the first and second, and you can see the first and second have gone through and been edited there. These ones have not been edited, and it's told us the date created. So we've already got a working version, albeit it's putting out pretty poor content that's not optimized or doesn't sound human written. We will update that so that it sounds human written. And we will also make amendments so it doesn't overwrite itself every single time. So here, we're still processing every single item every single time. But if the status is draft, i.e. it's already been written, then we shouldn't be doing that. So if we go into the filter, we can add a new condition. And that's actually if status is equal to draft, is not equal to draft, or we should probably say actually if status is equal to not started. I think that was our cue. Let's say not started, then process it. Because now if we rerun it, they're both draft posts. We don't want to overwrite them. So it's not going to keep any of the items and it's not going to run. That's exactly what we want. We don't want to overwrite it unless we want to overwrite it automatically, in which case we change the status manually. So there's two additions we're going to make to this flow. The first is make it write well, and the second is actual image generation. So we're going to use a simple image generation method here, and that is using actually a node from OpenAI. So if we type in OpenAI here, we can actually generate an image, and you can go and get 100 free OpenAI API credits here. We're going to generate an image using the DALL-E 3 model, and we're going to have to set up our credentials again. So if we create a new credential, we basically need to find an API key here. So if we go to OpenAI API key, we will create an OpenAI API account, create an OpenAI API key, and insert that key back into here and save. So you're going to either log in or sign up, create your key, and you're going to get to a page like this where it has platform.openai.com/API keys. You're going to create a new secret key, test key delete, I'm going to call it. Make sure that nobody abuses my API keys. And then I'm going to copy that API key exactly the same, go back in here, paste it in here, save, and it will confirm my connection has tested successfully. So we can now generate an image, and this will be a paid account. So if you want to generate images, you can find a free image generation service, but to follow along, I just recommend putting $1 or so on a paid account. and actually generating images. And we can generate a prompt in here for an image. Again, this will start as something quite poor. And what we can do is actually then make it into something a bit more our style later. But let's keep it as an expression. Generate a LinkedIn post image in black and white, professional, for the following post. And we will improve this. It won't be good at first. I'll just tell you now in advance. And if we connect this up, sometimes it can be a bit crossed wires here. If we connect this up to the previous flow, then what we're going to see is an image generated for the topic. So we know that the topic was given to us, or we know, sorry, the post is going to be given to us in the basic LLM chain stage. So when we run this again, let's just run this and call this not started to use this in an example. AI agents writing blogs, and we'll re-execute the workflow, and we'll just cancel it up before the generate image so that we can get the right input to generate the image here. So it's given us an output, and the way to not rerun this all the time is to go into the node and hit the pin icon up here. So we don't have to keep rerunning it now. We can just grab or store the data in there, so not use any more API tokens. And what we're going to do is just say generate a LinkedIn post from the following content in there. It's not going to be the best image, but it's going to output an image nonetheless. Now, because we're no longer connecting the output directly to the AI chain stage, we're going to need to make sure we're referencing the inputs in here from the correct node. So when you are connecting to the previous node, everything's referred to as .json. So when we were connecting to the LLM chain, it was json.output.content. Because if you remember in here, we have in our JSON, i.e. JSON, .output.content. It's that structure of an object. But now that we're 2 nodes away, we need to tell it, you're not grabbing it from this one, you're grabbing it from this one. And therefore, we need to name it in our inputs here, much like in the same way we've named it when we got it from a previous node, from the get topic node. So in here, we put in, after the $, we put in brackets, and you can see it's now said, okay, which node do you want to pick up from? And it will be the basic LLM chain. And then we're saying .item.json. So we just need to add that structure of the name of the node, .item, and then .json. And you can see now it's pulling the correct value again. So let's generate the image. Let's not add it yet to the Google Sheet because we'll probably have to add it in the form of a URL, not an image, but let's generate it. Let's execute the workflow, see what happens here. And this is going to run for a bit longer, and make sure you've got credits or this might fail. Or you can skip this entirely if you don't want to generate images at first for your posts. But it's a good learning mechanism to work out how to generate text using AI, how to generate images using AI. And we cover more specific tutorials inside the school community if you were to join, around how to get more comprehensive image sources, better models than this, because this is not going to output the best image. If we view the actual image that's come through, it's going to be black and white. It's a robot writing blog posts or LinkedIn posts. So it's, AI agents are now writing blogs. And it's a robot writing blogs. So it's not bad, but it contains loads of like AI writing in the background. We could change the prompt. But also, if you wanted a realistic image, for example, you'd use a different model, not this DALL-E 3. You'd go out and seek an external service. But you can see that it's output it as data. It's not output it as a URL, so it's not hosted anywhere. And that might cause us trouble when we come to upload the image. We will see, because we can't store the image, as far as I'm aware, in a Google Sheet as a data file. We need to store it as a URL somewhere. So one thing we're going to add to this is a service called ImageBB. You go to imagebb.com. We can basically upload and host images as URLs for free. You're going to sign up to an account here. You're going to go to the API and you're going to add a new API key. You're going to copy that and you're going to open up what's called a HTTP request, which we spoke about earlier. And what we're doing is we're sending data. So we're posting an image and we're uploading to this endpoint, which is the image upload. So I'm just going to copy that image upload endpoint. I'm going to put it in the URL. And if this seems a little bit complex, don't worry about the specifics of it right now. But we're basically sending the data file to host on ImageBB, which is free, and they're going to return us a URL that we can basically grab the image from at any point that we want. So in the authentication here, we're going to choose generic credential type. And in fact, I can see from this, it's a query credential type. So generic, and then the query auth. And then inside here, we're going to create a new credential. We're going to call it key. And then we're going to paste go back to ImageBB, copy our API key in here and paste it in here. It's not going to give us a success message because we need to try it out. But what we're doing is basically we are sending the data. If we connect it to the generate image here, we're sending the data and we'll upload and change the name here, upload image. If we go back into the node, we're basically saying grab this binary data file and upload it and returns me a URL. And then I know from looking at the ImageBB documentation, just take my word for it at this point, we're going to send headers and we're going to tell it what content type we're sending. And we're going to put in multi-part / form data. So basically saying we're sending potentially text and an image. And then inside the body that we're sending, we're going to send an NAN binary file. And the binary file is called data. And we can see that up here, the binary file, and the binary file is called data in here. So that should now upload an image. It should return a URL. And what we're going to do is just add a new column in here. We'll call it image. And that means we can now effectively populate, if we refresh the columns here, the image with whatever comes out here, the URL of the image. So let's switch this back to not started. Otherwise it won't run. Let's delete that final stage so that we can see what's returned from this API request. And let's process it again. So we're going to generate a new image in here. It's going to upload that image to ImageBB, which is our free hosting service. And we've got an error come back here, and it basically says, cannot read properties of undefined reading name, which tells me that it's expecting us to send a name with it. So instead of using the NAN binary file content type here, we'll send form data. And the first bit of form data, we will give it a name. So we'll say image, and the value is now a data. Sorry, we'll call it NAN binary file, but we'll give it a name of image. And then the input file name is data still. So let's just try and execute that independently. It might rerun the whole flow again, and that's absolutely fine. So let's see if it uploads correctly this time. And part of working out and doing these flows is actually just trial and error, working out what errors come back and actually working through them to successfully process it. So you can see it's now gone through and it's basically sent back a bunch of data. We can see it in the table format. And we've got a URL here. So if we go to the URL and actually type that in and go to it, there is our image and it's hosted on a URL so that we can go and grab that at any time. And that's a bit of a weird image, but on point for the topic, right? And it's black and white like we asked for. So we're now going to basically put that image URL back into here, but we can see now what the URL is. So what we want is the pure URL, not the display URL or the URL viewer. We want the pure URL because that means we can grab that file later. So although it's not the best set of content, we will now have a full flow where from a topic, it creates a content, it creates an image, and will update our status for us. So let's run that fully through. And then what we can do is talk about the second flow, which is scheduling. And then once we've sorted out things like scheduling, we can refine it and just make the content actually good and actually human-like and beat those content detection machines. And one thing I forgot to mention is make sure you unpin the data in here because every time it will execute for the same topic otherwise. So we've let it run fully through. We can see the date created, the topic, the content, and then the attached associated image. So let's see if there's a different one for each blog post. Yeah, it's created two things, and we probably want to put it in the prompt. Don't put any text in. And yeah, because if you see the text from certain models, it's not going to look very good. It's going to look AI generated, but we can refine the prompt later on. So now we've got a full working flow all the way from a topic input, your brand guidelines input uses an LLM or AI node to create a LinkedIn post for you. It even generates an image and hosts that image somewhere so that we can post it to LinkedIn later, and puts it back into your sheet ready for editing. So this all now is in a draft status. Let's build our second workflow, which is actually uploading to wherever we want to upload, whether that be Instagram, LinkedIn. The concepts are all the same, but actually we're going to design it as a LinkedIn system here. And we've already laid out the foundations for this. So what we're going to say is every day at a certain time, and let's add in our time trigger, and we'll call it 9 a.m. because we've got the draft posts being created at 8 a.m. So that gives us an hour to go in and edit it if we wanted to. Every day at 9 a.m., we're going to grab the Google Sheet data. And to speed this up, you can literally go above here and copy and paste down here. And now we're no longer interested in the brand guidelines because we've actually used the brand guidelines to create the post. So actually, instead of get brand guide, we're going to say get posts. And you can actually filter inside here. So if you wanted to filter certain dates, etc., but I prefer to always grab everything and then filter afterwards, like, is it scheduled today? Is it approved, etc., just because it's a cleaner flow. So we're going to go back to the content calendar, grab the URL, and we're going to paste that into here. And that's going to get all our posts back. So if we make sure we're running from the schedule trigger, we can now just test this sub workflow. Let's save our workflow. Let's pull our posts, and we should now have the 5 items, lots of which are empty, but 2 of which have content in, which are the ones we're interested in. So again, we're saying, is it scheduled today and is it approved? If not, then we're going to ignore it. So we can use a filter like we did above, or you can use an if node. And so that you've seen both, I'll use an if node. So we're taking 5 posts in, and we're basically checking the conditions. So what did we say? If it's scheduled today and if it's approved. So let's do if it's approved first. So status is equal to, and it's a string and approved. And this could be a drop down in here. It's just we're using text now. Drop down would make it more consistent and clean. So status is approved, if approved, and today. Let's just call it that. And then we're also pulling in the date scheduled, right? So, and date scheduled. And what we can do is make sure that this is an actual date column by going to format, number, and then date. And let's say it's today, 31st of the 7th, 2025. That's how we write it in the UK. Let's say both of these are scheduled for today. In fact, one is scheduled for tomorrow, 1st of the 8th, 2025. And we may need to change the formatting on this if you want to do US formatting, etc. as well, but date scheduled. And then this should now be a date and time, and we'll make it equal to, and we'll make that an expression, and we'll use the now again. Now is just basically like the exact moment in time now. And let's do now.format because the date time is going to have all the time extended onto it. And right now it's showing an error because actually it's saying it's having a string input because we've just updated this and haven't reloaded it. So let's just re-execute this and see if the format is going to be okay. Okay, so coming from Google Sheets, it may expect it to be a string. So actually we can just change this to string for now. And we'll say if the string is equal to this. So the date scheduled, let's say 31st of 7th, 2025 is equal. And then we need to make this the same format. So day, month in capitals, year. 31st of the 7th, 2025, 31st of the 7th, 2025. And you can write whatever format you want in there. And normally if you're using something like Airtable, you'd receive it in as a date rather than a string. But the premise is the same. Is it equal to today? Is it not? So if it's approved and equal to today, both those conditions are true, then it will move through the true branch. If not, no further action is taken. And you can actually put in this no operation, do nothing as a placeholder. So we can connect that to the false. But if it's true, let's grab another one, no operation, do nothing. Then actually you're going to post to LinkedIn. Right now, that's not going to post anything, but we are just using it to test out. So let's put one as approved. In fact, let's put them both approved. And we can basically say, okay, we go in here and we can make edits. Hello, edit. And that edit will now pull through as the content that we're going to send to LinkedIn. So if we execute that trigger again, you can now see that one of the conditions was met, was true, or both of the conditions. So one was approved and the date was equal to today, which was hopefully this post here, AI agents, the future of work. And then one was scheduled for tomorrow and the content was approved. So it's approved, but it's not scheduled for today. And you can see it's pulled through all of the information, including the content and the image there. So what we're going to need to do first is find a way to post to LinkedIn. So this is where you start looking for options to post to LinkedIn. So sometimes we would always start by actually typing in LinkedIn here, and we can create a post, and we can probably add an image to that post. But I know for a fact that it's actually quite difficult to set up an account for the API for LinkedIn. So sometimes when you're setting up accounts to programmatically, i.e., via API, send requests like automating things like posting on your social media, you have to jump through a few loopholes and create a developer account and do all sorts of things that are like just a little bit over the top for a demonstration like this. So there's actually an easier way. We can get a free trial for a system that's already got a node that you can install on NAN called Upload Post. So if we go to the nodes window here, and this connects to all of your social media, by the way, not just LinkedIn. And we've got this Upload Post in here. And what we can do is actually install this node. So this is what's called a community node, where somebody in the community or a company in the community has created this node, and NAN has said, this is a certified node. We're happy with it and it meets our standards, and you can install this. We can see that here we're uploading a text post, photos, a video, but what we can do is just install that node here, and then it's able to be used like any other node. So we'll install that here. We'll go to Upload Post. I'll show you where to set up and grab your API key. But what we're going to do is basically upload photos to LinkedIn here as well. So instead of using the LinkedIn node, we're actually going to post to LinkedIn here. And at first, we'll just do the text option. Instead of uploading photos, we'll upload text, and we'll fill out all these details, user identifier, which platforms we want to post to. It'll be LinkedIn, the title, and we'll set up the credential as well. So go to uploadpost-post.com. And it's basically a simple API for TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and more. Super easy to use, super simple setup. And the pricing means that we can do 10 uploads a month for absolutely free. So this is a great one to try out. We'll try for free. Once you set up your user profile, etc., you basically connect it to your first account. And it's exactly the same as we connected to Google. It will just basically go to your LinkedIn. You will approve or reject the access. Please approve it if you want to actually post from your LinkedIn account, and then you will generate your API key. Once you've done that, you will take your API key and you will copy it, and you'll take that API key, same as we've done before, back to the credentials, and you will enter your Upload Post API key in here, save it in here. That will connect successfully. When you go back, you can go to Manage Users. You can see the profile that you set up here and the LinkedIn you've connected. And you can see my profile is called Simon. Whatever yours is called, put that in your user identifier. And then what we're going to do is post in the main content into here. So we're actually going to post in this content in here. We're not uploading an image for now. So it's connected to my LinkedIn account. We've said upload text. We've said this is my profile. And now it's going to basically upload that text. So if you think about it, it's basically running every day. It's saying, is it approved and is it going today? If it is, let's upload it. And you can do various things like get this to schedule at a specific time rather than just happen at 9 a.m. every single day, because then you want to make it look more human. And we'll go back and we'll edit the content so that it actually reads more like a human and show you how to create this with your brand voice and make this your own as well. But for now, we're just looking at functionality. So one item will go and it will post to LinkedIn. So let's give it a go, and be careful with this because it will post to your LinkedIn, obviously. And if you go to your LinkedIn, we can see that that's now run. And if I go to my LinkedIn, I will be able to see on my LinkedIn profile that a new post has been uploaded. Hopefully I can get in there in time to remove it. And you can see AI agents, the future of work, replacing employees. And I'm just going to go in there and obviously delete that post so that nobody can see it because it's a bit of a rubbish post. So that's been successfully removed, but I also probably got a notification saying that that was uploaded. No, I didn't. So we're going to go back here, and we now know, super simple, to get that working. And the same thing here, if I wanted to connect to that to X, to Instagram, etc., it's the same sign up, really, really simple. If I wanted to add things like timing to it, then actually what I would do is add a time to this date column here. I'd probably make sure this was in a date format properly. And I'd say check every minute rather than once a day. I'd say check every minute. And if that hour or minute has now passed on that given date, then that's our condition to actually go and post to LinkedIn. So in this if approved and today, it would change to if approved and today, and the time was in the past, then we go and post it. The one thing we haven't added here is actually after we've uploaded the post, we should go back to our Google Sheet and actually confirm that this has been posted. So we'd go back here and we'd say, we'd copy and paste that node from our previous one, and we'd say, actually, it's been posted. So we can match by the ID that we were using earlier. We can get rid of date created. We can get rid of the content column, and we can get rid of the image. What we're just saying is find the relevant row and say that it has been posted on LinkedIn now. And that means that it will no longer be processed as approved because it will be posted. Otherwise, you'd have it posting multiple times the same things. So let's try the same with an image in here. So if we upload photos, we've now got the main content in here. And then we can either upload it as a file. So we could have actually uploaded it as a file from earlier, or we can upload it as a URL. And we know we have the URL in here. And then we can add a caption to that. And then the LinkedIn visibility, we can choose, okay, only my connections will see this, for example. So what I'm going to do is just run that through now. And it's still in the calendar as approved. And, the date is today. So it will go through and it will actually upload that post. And I'm just going to delete the date scheduled on tomorrow one so it doesn't post that rubbish post. But if we rerun it, it's going to run through, it's going to upload the post. And hopefully this time it's going to upload it with an image. We can open up our LinkedIn again, go to the profile, and you'll see it's now actually posted it with the image and the post. So I'm going to delete that one here. And it's as simple as that once you use something like upload post. And the only thing we've got now is we've used too many requests for the Google Sheets API in a short space of time. So it's just rejecting us at the moment. So it's not going to go and update our service. But if you're doing this once a day, that's going to be absolutely fine. You're not going to hit your limits there. But let's put this in as posted so it doesn't automatically do that again. And to get this to trigger every single day, we'd obviously turn this workflow to active. But to do that, we just need to clear our execution down here, save it, and turn it to active. And that means every day now, or every row that's added, will go through this process, and it will do that every day at 8 a.m. And then this time trigger will be activated, which is every day at 9 a.m. It will decide if there's a post to be posted, and it will go through this process. If it's scheduled for today and approved, then it will post the post. If not, then no further action will be taken. So congratulations, you've now built out the full LinkedIn content system. If you want to stick around and make it better, we're going to improve the prompts so that I can actually take good brand guidelines, and I'll show you where to get a prompt structure from. Now let's improve the writing so it actually sounds like a good post that's human written, that's also in our style as well. So I'm going to leverage an asset inside the school.com/scrapes classroom. So in here, we have all of the different masterclasses. So the foundations of AI automation, of which this is a very succinct version, the extended version that shows you everything you need to kind of master AI automation without the complexity, build out lots of different systems. We then have how to land your first client. And inside that, we have over 40 templates, all of which are actually being used, on proper client projects and have been built from client projects like lead generation, operations, sales, marketing, video creation, content creation, all of that kind of stuff. This is like an elementary version of some of those templates where we've built them out from scratch with clients. So inside the tips for starting out, we've got this prompts generator. And inside here is what I use to create all of my prompts really quickly. It creates a structured prompt from just this one prompt. So I will copy and paste this, and I will leave this somewhere available so everyone can access it below. And what we're going to do is just copy that directly into something like Claude. So if you don't have Claude, you can do this in ChatGPT. We can paste in that prompt in here, and basically it's going to give you a structured prompt output. So we've said, okay, based on the inputs I ask you for, give me a structured output, and it's going to output all of the different sections, etc., to make a really nice, tidy prompt that's like a 90% version to start from. And you can have this for free as well. So what we're going to ask it to do is, based on LinkedIn constraints, create a human-like, i.e. third grade language, or human written LinkedIn post about an input topic. Keep it simple, keep it authentic. Give it a hook. The output should only be content. And we're going to just give it access to the web here. So it can go and search for LinkedIn constraints. We don't need to search any of that, but basically just going to run it. I'm going to run it on Opus 4, but any of these would work. ChatGPT would work too. Let's see if it can output us a good